Another major story in our nation's capital right now with far-reaching impact is relating to tariffs. The Supreme Court is hearing arguments this week in a case centered around President Trump's usage of a 1977 law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. The White House is using that law to impose double-digit tariffs on nearly all global trade partners. But the question is it legal?
All right, constitutional law expert Robert McWhirter joining us now with an update on where things stand. Robert, thank you for being with us this morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I feel like every time we have these conversations about President Trump and whether what he's doing is constitutional, you have told me no. In this case, it seems the lower courts have said the same thing. They don't know that using this law, which gives the president economic powers during emergencies, is applicable to what he's done with tariffs. What are your thoughts on this so far?
No.
All right.
I saw it coming.
And I will tell you, I think after listening to the arguments, I think most of the justices will tell you no as well, as did the lower courts. Look, I always bring my owner's manual, the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution in Article 1, Section 8 says, Congress shall have the power to impose taxes, duties, excises, etc. And that goes all the way back to England because the Parliament used to have that power as a check on the king. The kings had to go to Parliament to get money to do whatever they wanted to do, including wage war. And so that's how this grew up and how the Constitution grew up. And the framers of our Constitution gave this as a check against the president. And that's why Congress has that power. And a tariff is just a tax. That's all it is. And so he just doesn't have the authority, nor does he have a delegation from this particular statute to do what he's doing in raising these tariffs.
And Robert, President Trump has called this case before the Supreme Court, quote, literally life or death for our country. So why is it so critical for the high court to rule in Trump's favor?
Well, I think the country's going to survive regardless of what the Supreme Court does in the case. If the Supreme Court rules against Donald Trump, commerce will still go on and everything will be fine. If the Supreme Court rules against the Trump regime on this thing, it does raise a very serious question about what do you do to refund all these so-called billions of dollars that have come in from this tax, because it's an unauthorized tax. So it's going to be quite an administrative mess. I'll grant him that. But really, what the cost is to American business has been greater than the benefit of the tax. And in fact, if you look at all the forces lined up against this, very conservative business groups have jumped in favor of getting rid of these tariffs. This has split the American conservative movement and business movement right in half of the people who are trying to be pro-Trump on this tax and the people who are traditionally not supportive of these kind of things.
Yeah, of course, there'll be many business implications. I want to know what you think about implications as far as finally seeing maybe some pushback to what President Trump has been trying to do as far as executive power. This case feels like a little bit of test of what he can do with executive power, and we're finally seeing the conservative majority really push back for the first time in this wave since he's been elected.
Yeah, and I think that's the most interesting question of all. I would look to what Justices Alito and Thomas do. Justices Alito and Thomas have been just very pro-Trump. However, they're also part of a majority that's against delegation of power, kind of preventing Congress from delegating too much power to the executive branch. For instance, environmental protection. They're into this, not letting the environmental protection have too many regulations because that's making law, and they say Congress should do that. So they're of that kind of ideological mind frame, and yet they're pro-Trump. And the little kind of twists and turns they're going to have to take in this case, either in dissent or joining the majority, is going to be really interesting. And it's a question of whether they have any intellectual integrity or not. As far as the opinion, I'm going to guess that either Justice Roberts, Justice Gorsuch, or Justice Coney Barrett is going to write the opinion. All three solid conservatives, and they're going to write it against Donald Trump.
Very interesting. I know this is a fascinating one. It'll be interesting to see what it means for executive power, for all these tariffs that have been imposed. Robert, your no might stand. The Supreme Court might decide with you this time. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Very good.
All right.